The Finals MVP, two-time champion, and most coveted free agent has yet to declare where he will be taking his talents. We know Toronto and both LA teams are still in the mix. Stephen A. Smith, I'm looking at you. Who has the most to lose in the Kawhi sweepstakes?
Easily the Los Angeles Clippers, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, when you look at the Los Angeles Clippers right now, let's be very, very clear about something here. You have an opportunity to be relevant in a very, very significant way in Los Angeles. You have an opportunity to be a title contender. This is while the Lakers are in the process of gaining momentum back after a 6-year absence from the postseason with LeBron, with Anthony Davis in tow. If you don't get Kawhi Leonard, you fall off the map and you damn near fall back to what you have been as the Clippers. I won't insult this organization, which I consider to be first class at this particular juncture, by saying they fall back to Donald Sterling status when he was with the Clippers.
No.
I certainly would not say that.
No.
But what I would say is this: the level of relevancy that they had, that they were gaining traction. If you lose Kawhi, especially if it's to the Lakers, it is a disaster of epic proportions, because the Lakers are going to have all the sizzle, all the headlines. The Clippers are going to be an afterthought. They're not going to matter to folks in L.A. opposite, outside of their rabid fan base, whatever that fan base is. If you are not a diehard Clippers fan, you ain't Marcellus Wiley, your buddy. If you ain't Billy Crystal, if you ain't somebody like that, you don't give a damn
Clipper Darryl
about the Clippers. If you're not
There's
a
like
reporter,
3 of them in the world.
if you're not going to give a damn about the Clippers if they don't get Kawhi, and especially if he ends up with the Lakers.
If Kawhi winds up with the Lakers, that's a disaster for the Clippers. I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's not. And the Clippers have the most to gain by getting Kawhi because of what you just mentioned. But that doesn't mean they have the most to lose. The most to lose is clearly the Toronto Raptors, who not only already have him and won a championship, but traded an all-star in DeMar DeRozan to get him. And at this juncture of free agency, there are no other stars left. Stars are all gone. And Jimmy Butler's not going. Kemba Walker's not coming to Toronto. Not that they would necessarily anyway. No Kyrie Irving. AD's not available in a trade. Who's available? Like everyone's, KD's gone. Everyone's gone. So with Kawhi, we know they have championship potential. Because remember, they beat a Golden State Warriors team, less without KD, but they had Klay for most of that series, and they won in 6 games. They're positioned to win again with Kawhi. Even though the Sixers, you and I might say they're the favorites now, they're still positioned to do it. Don't forget, Kawhi took out the Sixers just this past season. If they lose him with nothing to replace him, they go from champions to they don't have a shot.
First of all, you're wrong on a multitude of levels. Number one, the Toronto Raptors, when you look at them, if you look at Siakam, you look at Gasol, you look at Lowry and these boys, the fact of the matter is, considering that along with the Eastern Conference, which isn't that formidable, you can still find a way to be respectable without Kawhi simply because of the conference that you're playing in. The road to prosperity is far more difficult going through the West than the Eastern Conference. That's number one. Number two, keep in mind the sign and trade element. Golden State with D'Angelo Russell, along with Miami with Jimmy Butler. Understand that if there's a reason why Masai and the Toronto Raptors wanted to be the last ones in that meeting. Certainly that doesn't mean that you keep him, but it does mean that you could possibly talk him in to working out a negotiation situation. Wouldn't be applicable to the Lakers because they have nothing to offer. But let's say, for example, Kawhi Leonard says, well, I'm not coming back to you because you know what? I may go to the Clippers. Well, if you are the Los Angeles Clippers, excuse me.
You're going to sit here and tell me Gallinari on the Raptors makes them a championship contender?
Of course not. That's not what I'm saying. Are you not listening to me? I specifically said the road to prosperity is far more difficult through the West than the East, but the Eastern Conference, you could possibly squeeze into the players because you only got 3 or 4 teams. You're looking at Milwaukee, you're looking at Boston, you're looking at Philadelphia, maybe Toronto. Can't ignore Indiana now that they picked up Malcolm Brogdon. If Oladipo comes back and he's healthy. Outside of that, you look at the Eastern Conference, what you got? There's no definitive, formidable team in the last 3 spots in the Eastern Conference. The 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th seed. You don't know for sure. So I'm just saying like this. If you take, whether it's, and I don't think they'll do this with a Patrick Beverley, but the Gallinaris of the world and some of the other pieces that they have on their roster, you might potentially have some parts in order to get Kawhi. Obviously, if you're the Clippers, you're willing to give up something. And if you give up those other elements, could they squeeze in as a 6th, 7th, or 8th seed? Of course they could.
Wait,
That's my point.
They're going to make the playoffs, the Raptors, with or without Kawhi, because Masai Ujiri is one of the 2 or 3, if not the best GM in basketball.
Are you ready for this? I don't know if that's the case with the Clippers if they don't get Kawhi.
Excuse me. Did the Clippers, that was my question, did they have Kawhi this past season?
No.
Did they make the playoffs?
Yes.
And they won 2 games in those playoffs from the KD-led Warriors.
And they won 48 games. So I get it. What I'm asking you is, have you not paid attention to what's going on in the Western Conference? Have you not seen what's transpired? Portland's going to be tough. And in fairness to you,
Utah,
these are some of the same teams. But Utah is incredibly.
It's the Pelicans that really got better.
Excuse me. The Pelicans got better. Okay, the Pelicans got better. We don't know what's going to happen with Minnesota. That remains to be seen. I'm certainly not counting them out. But I'm looking at the Western Conference. Sacramento didn't get in the playoffs. I don't expect that to happen this year. I expect the Sacramento Kings to be a playoff team this year. So I'm thinking about Sacramento. I'm thinking about Golden State. I'm thinking about the LA. I'm thinking about the Lakers. Obviously, they didn't make the playoffs. We expect them to be in. Utah's going to be there. Portland's going to be there. Houston's going to be there. New Orleans is no joke. Okay, so there's a plethora of teams within the Western Conference that you look at and you say, well, whoa, whoa. We don't know if the Clippers, if they don't get Kawhi, we don't know what's going to happen to the Clippers this year.
They didn't win 43 games. They didn't win, 42 games. They won close to 50 games. And that was the first year they were together, really. That Jerry West just helped form that team just now. If anything, I think the Clippers, even if they don't get Kawhi, could maybe be marginally better because they'll tweak the roster on the margins. With Kawhi, I think they're going to win the chip, or at least get out of the West.
Can I ask a question?
But even without him, they're coming off a very impressive playoff performance.
Nobody is denying the impressiveness with which we saw from them. What I'm simply saying is that was last year. This is another year. And one of the things you really pay attention to that I always pay attention to is that, again, once they see who you are and you're no longer sneaking up on people, that's a different ballgame. Now, obviously, the NFL is a different sport, but many, many occasions we've lamented the fact, what happened to this team? A year ago, they were this. The next year, they win the Super Bowl, and then the next year, they don't even make the playoffs. Why? Because people see you coming.
NBA don't work exactly.
I know the NBA doesn't work that way, but you know something? The Western Conference, there have been teams that have won 40-plus games that missed the playoffs.
The Clippers,
Minnesota won. I forgot which team that won like 47 and they didn't even make the playoffs.
I don't disagree with a lot of these points, but what you're talking about is not that the Clippers have the most to lose. They don't have them now. And if they were to get them, it'd be a coup because for a brief moment, maybe, they could, if not flip LA, at least really come up on the Lakers. But it's not the same as the Knicks and the Nets. The Lakers have built such goodwill and loyalty in that town over so many years. Even if you get Kawhi and come up on them, you're not flipping LA in any kind of permanent or semi-permanent way.
They have the richest owner in all of sports.
It doesn't matter.
You have Jerry West. You have a Hall of Fame coach in Doc Rivers. You have Hall of Fame coach in Doc Rivers. If you don't get Kawhi Leonard, it's a disaster.
But it's not.
It really is.
It's not as bad as the team who has him won a chip with him. By the way, you kept bringing it up. The Bruins and the Blues leading the news, even though and neither one of them are from Toronto. The Toronto team,
and by the way,
can't even lead the sports news.
And by the way, a week after they won the championship, they still weren't leading the news.
But if you keep Kawhi,
what difference does it make?
But if you keep Kawhi, you have a chance to really start changing the culture of that entire country, let alone town. And you're going to lose Kawhi, goodbye.
You're not changing the culture. They'll pay attention to the Toronto Raptors when the postseason arrives.
All right.
Outside of that, they'll ignore him for hockey.
Basketball is the fastest growing sport worldwide.
Max, maybe he's going to the New York Knicks. You don't know. The Warriors' streak of finals appearances looks all but over. But could they miss the postseason entirely? That's coming up later in the show. Stephen A., what else you got?
A lot more to come on First Take. The 76ers offer Ben Simmons the max. Does he deserve it? And you will not want to